Hello, people, and welcome back to the Tech of Tomorrow podcast with Sebastian Hidalgo. I am Sebastian Hidalgo. This is the show where we believe that the real technology of the future are the humans building that technology and building the future. Now, with that said, we've been already chatting with today's guest before recording, and we decided to record just, for your sake. Otherwise, you will miss a great conversation. So, housekeeping, remember to like the show on YouTube, follow the channel because it's still too small, and I don't like small channels. So, please help me grow it. Follow and comment on Spotify, supports the show greatly. And if you like this episode, share it with your friends. And yes, that's it now. My guest today, his name is Bernd Preuschoff. He's the CEO at CodeCamp. He's an author, a speaker, and a dancer. And his motto for life is moving people. So before I dive into questions and we keep the conversation going, hello, Bernd. How are you?
Hello, Sebastian. Thanks for having me as a guest. I'm doing good, and I really look forward to our conversation.
Me too. Listen, I start right into, before we get into the rest of the topics, I start right into something I mentioned. Your motto is moving people. Why is that?
Yes, this is a motto that was created years ago when I actually left digital and founded my own dancing business. And we were looking for a slogan that fits to what I wanted to achieve as a dancing coach. I'm looking back over more than 30 years in professional dancing. So I was a competitive dancer together with my partner years ago and became a dancing coach. And that's what I want to do. I want to move people not only in the physical, but also in the emotional way. And that's what we dancers want to do. And therefore, from that point, I kept that motto, and people know me by that, or by the dancing CDO. That also has become like a flying word.
The dancing CTO. I like that. Uh, Listen, how does one go from dancing to business? And what's the connection between the two things?
Actually, I didn't realize it right away. You know, when you spend so much time in your sports hobby, and I think many of your listeners will relate to that. For you personally, it's natural. You don't think that much about it. But then when I worked as a consultant for the big consultancies and I became a leader myself, I realized that sometimes I entered the boardroom and I worked with people and I actually felt like in a dancing lesson because I watched the energy between people. I saw who is leading and who is following. I saw the soloists who desperately tried to become a team. And also, watching good leaders who do something that goes beyond measurable results. And I realized that's the way we dance this thing. I usually describe dancing as art condensed as a competitive sport. And this actually brings together the two aspects. As dancers, we do a lot of hard work. We go into the room and we practice a step a million times until it looks easy and without gravity. And on the other hand, we think about things to come which we don't know if they are possible or not. And so it's a lot of creative work. And I think there are a lot of parallels between working as a dancer professionally and being a manager or a leader in today's world and lead people and create experiences that matter.
How do you feel that the principles of, like, before we get there, how big is CodeCamp? How many employees do you have?
Right now, we are, I think, 66 people at CodeCamp. People probably don't know the name, but to give a bit of a environment, we are a 100% subsidiary of Nuremberg Insurance Group. Nuremberg Insurance Group is one of the largest insurance companies in Germany, and CodeCamp has been founded as their product and talent incubator in 2017. And now we have transformed ourselves into a consulting and implementation partner for companies in the insurance, finance, and also German Mittelstand business space.
Okay, so how do you apply what you learned in your career as a professional dancer to leading 66 people?
Well, I think it all starts, and this is not just at CodeCamp, but also I think whenever you take over a transformational job as a leader, the first thing you need to do is listening. Same thing that I tell dancers to do. If you are on the floor, the first thing you should do is listen to the music before you start dancing in order to understand what's happening. And I think that's the same thing if you take over a company like this, or also as a CDO or CIO in a certain transformational initiative, in order to understand, okay, where does all this movement that you see comes from? Because things are there for a reason. People have made decisions before you, and there's a background to everything that you see. So listen and watch before you judge. And the next thing is, once you've figured out, okay, I have an idea what it can be. It's all about the vision that you create. Okay, it's like creating a choreography. Thinking about, okay, if I look into the future, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, what could this look like? What kind of music do we have then? What kind of choreography are we doing then? And of course, on what kind of floor are we moving? What is our competition? What are the other couples doing, or the other companies? And what could be a space that makes us unique, or at least makes us visible? The same thing you have to consider when you are on the floor with 20 other couples. And then, of course, from there, it's practicing, and doing the little things 1 million times. Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you don't get it wrong anymore. And this is resilience. This is measuring. If you don't measure in practice, you will be surprised what happens in competition. And same thing in business. And this would be the three things that I would throw on the table at first.
It's fascinating because there is so much overlap with what I do, meaning finding where you are unique in the market, finding how to lead people to express that, because as a company, you are one unit made of all these different units that need to express the same message at the same time in the right way, so that people trust you and people believe you as a company, people believe in you, because customers, before they buy, they need to not only see the ROI, but believe that you are the right person, the right unit, the right company to provide it, given that there is so much competition. Which leads me to the question, have you, because I've seen this a lot, especially, Germany, sometimes business environments can be very conservative. So have you felt any resistance to this approach, to your approach to business in more conservative business environments?
Yes and no. I think there's the one point I deeply believe, and that's why I refer to dancing a lot. I think if you go back in history, as long as people dance, as long as people were doing business with each other, I think it's a way of connecting humans. So, and I've learned that if I talk to people using the analogy of sports and using the analogy of art and performance, people can highly relate to it. So, because in their private life, they are sports people as well. They do different things. They do cycling, running, whatever, but they understand if I use the sports analogy, okay, this is what we are talking about. On the other hand, um, I've learned that especially the higher you get into companies, the more you confuse people who have grown as a manager in a different way. So, as if I talk to you as a sports person, you would probably agree that every world champion needs a team with passion. you need passion in the team. You need those people who sacrifice a lot to become a world champion, who ignite a fire in their team members, who are willing to go the famous extra mile, but they never consider it an extra mile. It's because they do it for the passion. And sometimes I realize that in management, we seem to have lost a bit of this passion, and we are used to think of management more than as an engineering act. So you need tools, you need a plan, you need a structure, you need a hammer, you need nails. But passion is difficult for many people. And so I always need to explain to managers that passion is nothing bad. And all the good teams in business that I have seen have always been driven by kind of passion that also creates the code of conduct and the core esprit de corps in this team. And I think it's necessary to ignite. And also this is a request to the managers. There's this old saying, only if you burn yourself, you're able to ignite others. And so it always comes back to you as a manager to reflect what are the things that you're really burning for.
I love it because there is this bias towards logical thinking, right? Which is perfectly fine. We need to be logical thinkers. We need to make logical decisions that are for the good of the company. And we need to make data-driven decisions. But something I tell often people is that if you only make data-driven decisions, then you as a CEO are are easily replaceable with ChatGPT that makes great data-driven, at least assessments, right? Now, one of the most spectacular business failures I have observed from afar, not as a consultant, is recently, probably in this year, past year and a half, is a company in a IT services industry that was taken over by new management, and new management didn't quite get the concept of passion, so they started treating managing the company as an engineering act. The result of that was that people started leaving the company. As more people left, the revenue started tanking. As the revenue started tanking, they had to fire more people, start firing people, and which led to more people leaving because now they were afraid for their job security, and now the company's in big trouble. So if there is a CEO watching this that doesn't believe in the intangibles, meaning doesn't believe in the little things that make up culture like passion, what's your advice to them? How do you correct course if it's not in your nature anymore to observe the company as also a human endeavor?
Well, I think the first advice that I would give, which I also often don't see when I see companies that face transformation, the first thing that you need to create is a high level of transparency, and in your communication, a high level of clarity. We sometimes in management tend to cover the message in very friendly words and making sure that nobody is offended and there is no pushback. But we are not always talking about the top end of the league. Sometimes we are also talking about place 20, place 22, and you are in danger of losing the whole competition. And I think every sportsman will agree you need to make a very clear and detailed analysis, which is honest. And if you fail with honesty in this analysis because you think, well, we are hidden champions, we are famous, we are whatever, we are a great brand, then of course, obviously, your whole training schedule and practice schedule will be wrong because you're not practicing or improving the right things. And this will block you from getting out of this bad position. And we know that we as humans, we work like that. Everybody has a story where you think, okay, things start to change when people hit the wall, even though they saw the wall from far, far away. But they finally change when they hit the wall. Why is that? And I think it's just because there's this clarity missing. Okay, guys, there's a wall, stop. And reflect and change. I think that's the first advice. And the next advice is changing the direction of a company is not always a nice thing. It's not always about, having this 12-month change program with electing ambassadors and creating parties and events. If the environment gets tough, and I think a lot of companies have seen this lately with all the global crisis that we see going around, there's this moment, I think, when it comes to us leaders to make decisions. That's what I think we are getting paid for. And sometimes, of course, we want to get everyone on board. There's this moment where also we have to make the tough decisions. And for the sake of time, not for the sake of being the guy in charge and in power, but for the sake of time. It's not the decision that takes so long. It's the non-deciding that takes us so long. And I think that's the next advice. Be clear in your analysis, make a clear plan, and then decide to go for it. And this is the only way that I've learned in my career that actually makes a difference and changes things.
I love it. And maybe you'll agree, but I think people change and they have clarity only when they hit that wall, because at that point you have run out of enough options, and you have tried or failed at enough things that the wall makes things very black and white. You're left with what has to be done, or with doing nothing and facing the consequences. So your only choice is doing the right thing, because the right thing is the last thing to do, left to do. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think every one of us has seen in his or her career that moment. People and companies have developed a great profession in neglecting the reality. So take this example. Oh, the wall is far away. It's far away. Yes, but it's getting closer. Yes, but it's still far away enough. And then, yes, but now we are probably hitting it. Well, yeah, but we will hit it, but it will not be that bad. There's always this next best excuse. Um, and there's a lot of creativity actually flowing into this next best excuse, I've learned. Instead of saying, okay, it's a wall, it will be painful, we don't want to hit it, stop. And yeah, I think that's something that's actually quite easy, but if your priority is to offend no one, and I think this has become increasingly worse in times of social media. People have learned on social media that you need to look for a reason to be offended. And if you are offended and you write it down, you get a reaction. And sometimes being offended is more important than the fact that people are talking about. And this also makes political discussions so difficult nowadays. And I think this also has spilled over into management discussions. How do we avoid to offend someone instead of how do we deal with the facts?
It's funny you say that, because in the case study I shared before, that struggling company at some point started developing that same pattern. Meaning the main concern was not offending and not concerning. So I would hear about these meetings where they would share data for transparency with employees, but then the data was all embellished, and it was all like it was it wasn't rough around the edges. It was really suited out so that nobody would worry, so that nobody would concern, so that nobody had questions that were hard, that management didn't like or want to answer. And we see the results of that, right? It's these little cultural decisions you make that compound over time and then end up affecting your bottom line. And it's all what's weird maybe for many leaders is that it's a bunch of intangibles that you don't see coming until they bite you.
Absolutely. And I think, again, coming back to that analogy, if you are a member of a team and you've lost your last 5 matches, it's essential to go together into one room and say, guys or people, this is not what we want. This needs to stop. And then be very clear on, do we need to run faster? Do we need different equipment? Do we need to talk more to each other on the field? What is it? And then next game, try this and learn. Uh, deliver, improve, repeat. Deliver, improve, repeat. That's actually also the slogan that I used for our year start presentation here at the camp, because we had a record year last year, and say, okay, this is perfect. Now deliver, improve, repeat. Like, one championship can be an accident, two championships in a row can be luck, three championships in a row is a pattern. And so that's what we want to create. We want to create a new pattern. And for creating a pattern, you need to act. And I think it's really as simple as that. And if I talk to people on a sports level, everybody says yes. And on a management level, I tell people, why do we assume that once we are going through an office door, we become different humans? We act exactly the same way. And honestly, I think everybody knows what needs to be done.
Yes, just sometimes doing, as you said, doing the right thing is not always the most popular thing or the easiest decision to make. And that's where, again, we
Mm.
run into all these perceived obstacles, which is, oh my God, how is this decision going to be perceived? It, it just, it's, it's funny how companies develop groupthink. And it's like all management. I think that the thing about management teams is supposed to be a set of different heads that think together in an optimal way. However, if there is nobody challenging that, they develop like this groupthink. Then you see them become one brain that sees things from the same perspective. And then just like an individual person, they cannot change and they run into bad habits and they escape accountability. And that's how these compounds.
Absolutely. I'd like to add another aspect on it. I've also seen in sports, but as well in management, there's this certain point where companies and teams, or couples in my case, tend to turn the whole day's conversation just around themselves. There's a high level of dealing with your own internal business and political stuff. And I also, when I go to a company, and I always tend to look at their strategy presentations and how they deal with competition. Because if they usually most companies deal with competition in a way, okay, these guys do this, we are better than that. These guys do that, we are better than that. So on the slides, you will always see a lot of arguments why their competition is worse than we are. But I've learned on the floor. I actually took all my students to watch their competition, and it's tough because it touches your ego. You see somebody on the floor who's doing an amazing job, amazing choreography, and you need to stand that and watch and appreciate. And but that's the way to learn, and also see, okay, obviously this couple or this team is doing something you've never actually thought about, and maybe your internal discussions are circling around a completely wrong topic. And I think it's essential to always watch and appreciate your competition and make sure that you are not circling around yourself, but circling around to improve compared to your competition and change yourself internally to be a better contender. And I think it's very essential as a leader to catch that point, and always be the watch guard of what we want to do is has to be relevant on the floor.
It's why I love combat sports so much. I fought for years and I still do combat sports, but I love them. I love them because it's not it can be a team effort when you have a coach and you're preparing for a competition. But when showtime comes, when you are on the tatami, when you are on the ring in the cage, it's you and your competitor, and even in the gym when you're preparing, it's you and the person in front of you, and you cannot escape reality. A punch is a punch. You dropping your hand at the wrong time is you doing something wrong. And what I love about it is that it forces you to improve because not improving means that the next day you're gonna walk into the gym and get punched in the nose again. And that feedback loop is not pleasant, but it's strong enough to force you to watch tape, to force you to reevaluate how you approach things. That's what I also love analogies with combat sports and looking at your competition because they force you to constantly improve based on reality, not based on wishful thinking, right? Which is what I see in many companies. Many companies go, oh my God, we are the number one provider of this service in the market. Then it's clearly not true. And if you tell them, the CEO will tell you, okay, but we want to get there. And the question becomes then, okay, how? And that's when they run out of answers.
Absolutely. In dancing, we call that what you told about combat sports. We have that saying, the truth lies on the floor. This is when you go out and you will face reality, like you say. And this refers to what I mentioned earlier. If you haven't been humble in your analysis before you went to practice, it's going to hurt. It's going in your case, it's going to hurt your nose. In my case, it's going to hurt the ego. But also, I've seen an athlete who was also in martial arts, and he said, practicing to avoid the other's punch is not enough. And I see a lot of companies also acting like that. They are acting. They want to avoid punches, and I think going to the point, what is my way to actually hit punches myself is a totally different league, and this this perspective of I want to avoid losing versus I want to win actually is a huge mental difference. And I think it's hard for many CEOs nowadays where the struggles on the globe are getting more and more and the environment is getting more complex. A lot of companies turn into this mood of, okay, how can we avoid losing? But I always ask them, okay, the stadium has changed, the competition has changed, but still, let's think about what would be a way to win. Because I truly believe that even if you aim to win, eventually you will not win, but you will always turn out better than if you just started with thinking about not losing. And I think that's a mindset questions which I think is essential in nowadays competition.
It is a big mindset question. Again, I relate this to fighting a lot because if you enter a fight and you don't feel the urge to win, if you don't feel like the hunger is called, or if in the middle of the fight something happens and you start getting tired and you start talking back to yourself and you're noticing, I'm tired, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, you're just going to spiral down this loop that's going to lead you to lose. So every time you play not to win, you're actually actively planning to lose. You just don't know that you're planning to lose because in your head it's like, okay, I'm just defending my position. But it's like a river, right? There's no position to defend because it keeps flowing forward. You either move with it or you get left behind, but there's no position to defend. You need to play to win.
Absolutely. And I think it's the art of leading to keep that hunger. And I think, especially in the Western communities, we sometimes see the problem that we are very much saturated. There's no hunger anymore. I mean, we have success, we earn money, so enough is enough. And I've seen also company owners who, where the question, do I go to the Maldives 4 times a year or 5 times a year, is a very philosophical question. But actually, to keep that hunger, also every time you change positions in your career, has always been very important to me. That even if I'm getting older, I'm still an athlete. I'm still far from retiring. For the next position, I will only bring more competition experience. And but still, what is essential to win in this new position and to be successful with my team? And I think this is, of course, tough if you talk about decades of a career. But to me, it's also something I say, well, this is the fun about it. And again, referring to the way of thinking as a dancer, we've talked about before the podcast and say, if you are a dancer and you've done a perfect choreography, and I would tell you, that's perfect, Sebastian. Now do that choreography for the next 10 years. It would kill you. You would say, "Are you kidding?" You know, I want to do new things, and that's also the point where I see that dancers are not afraid of innovation or transformation or whatever. They actually like it and they enjoy it and they see it as part of their inner selves, and it's not a threat. And that's also a mindset question to see reinventing yourself again and again over years is actually fun.
Is and it's also what we see in massive success stories. Meaning, for example, SpaceX. It was impossible, according to everybody, to make space travel cheaper. It was impossible to just enter as a private company into space travel successfully. Here comes this guy, no, love him or hate him. Here comes this guy from South Africa. He's an immigrant in America, even though he's naturalized. He enters the industry and he says, okay, we rebuild everything from scratch. He tells his engineers, okay, how do we build rockets? They explain to him and he tells them, ditch all of that and build a new rocket. And you see that improvement of adaptation in the picture of the first Raptor rocket, extremely complex and big and clunky, and the latest Raptor booster, which is elegant, is streamlined, just because they like the culture that Elon Musk imprints on his companies is we challenge everything. And if necessary, we take things that everybody takes for granted and certain, and we rebuild them from scratch until we find a better version. It takes courage to do that, and to the point that his company was on the verge of failing before they finally landed one rocket vertically. But you see the results. You see the results of being willing to adapt and being willing to challenge things that everybody thinks that's just how it is.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like you say, loving or hate him, that's what we see he's now doing in politics. He's taking nothing for granted. And well, that puts it into a different dimension. I'd rather like to see that in corporates, but than in my democracy. But that's a different topic. But I agree with the approach to say, why? Why is that? So if you talk to people, of course, there's science and there's things there's the way things are done, but why? And also that's the thing here. For example, at CodeCamp, this organization has been built as an incubator of products and services. So we along with the according operating model, and it was perfect for the situation back then and the task it was given. But today, being a service provider in a very narrow space, you need different things. And therefore, reinventing yourself is not bad. And there's no point in saying, well, the history is bad and we need to get away from that. No, I like it to see it more in let's create a new chapter. It's still the same book, but it's a new chapter. And of course, you're taking your DNA to this new chapter as well. But this is what makes all the good stories. It's heroes going from chapter to chapter. It's what makes good artists. Everybody's talking about Lady Gaga and Madonna. They are reinventing themselves every time. That's what makes good actors. We all know movie stars who have been reinventing themselves for decades. And that's what we like. And that's what actually draws people to say, well, I want to be part of it. And so again, don't see reinventing as a threat, but rather of a highly creative act, which can actually make a lot of fun.
Also, on this topic, one of the things I is one of the first thing I recommend my clients when I walk in, like week one, is okay. Our first move is interviewing the ones you acknowledge as your best clients, and we ask them, why do you like us, and what else would you like to see from us? Reinvention doesn't have to be taking a massive risk into something new. It doesn't mean that you are a software company and tomorrow you start offering legal services. Sometimes it's simply going to people that already like you, that already buy from you, and asking, what else do you need? It's like solving a new problem for the same people, or taking the skills you have as a company, the capabilities, and adapting that to a problem that your customers have and
Mhm.
somebody else hasn't solved properly. That's still a form of pivoting and innovating without having to just outstretch yourself, because sometimes companies do this through acquisition. You see a company, software company acquires an e-commerce company, and then they try to couple these two things together that don't actually go together, and it's disaster for both entities. How do you see that?
Abso- Absolutely. And we exactly had the same discussion here in my company, because if you were born and raised as an incubator, in 2017, you're always looking for this highly innovative, disruptive, unique, whatever service and product. And if I talk to our clients today, uh, the first thing they say is, you care and you've got the right people and you deliver. And we condensed it to this sentence: we are big enough to deliver, but small enough to care. And that's actually something which makes us not necessarily unique, but is perfect differentiation criteria to say, in the first chapter, everybody told me, but don't you think we are too small? No, we have the perfect size for perfect clients where we care. But do you think we do something unique in terms of innovation? No, but we have a history in innovation and we understand how to go from a POC into a productive environment and scale things. And so we are a perfect partner who wants to go that way, but doesn't want to deal with the big corporates and doesn't want to deal with the small freelancers. So we have the perfect size, and and that's our spot. And that spot is absolutely okay. And of course, together with our history coming from a highly regulated corporation, many of the regulated things out there don't scare us. It's our daily business. So we can help clients, especially in the space of AI or process automation or cloud migration. And we are the perfect partner for a perfect spot and a perfect target client. And I think that's more important than, creating the next Tesla, the next Netflix, whatever. Because if you are successful with clients and you help them to develop, you will develop yourself as well on the way.
I love what you said, because that's more or less roughly how I position myself. Meaning, you work with me, you get the quality of an A team from a top agency without having to deal with all their procurement process, without having to deal with all the politics, without having to pay the overhead, the bin bags, the laptops, the office in a tower. And customers like that, meaning that's how I recently stole a client from McKinsey, just because I cared to care about the person I was talking to, instead of just chasing them because, hey, we need another project. Give me some money. And I think as AI progresses, as we have more and more technology, I really think that what will make a difference in business is the human touch, being close to the customer, caring about the customer, which sounds, I think people misinterpret that. Everybody says, of course we care about our customers, but do you really, like, do you talk to them, or do you care because they pay you and you want to keep them a month longer, a year longer? I think there is a subtle difference between saying you care and caring, but when you show that you care, the market responds to that.
Absolutely. And coming back, like I said, I think dancing is as old as business. It's social interaction. If you think about business, not in terms of, like you say, making money, but in terms of it's a social interaction. I've got something that you need and what can help, and you've got something that can help me. Um, think about it that way. And also, it becomes obvious there are people that you are really happy to interact with and where you are happy about every next interaction. And it's also okay to say that there are people that you don't want to interact with because it doesn't match. And that's okay because that's what makes us different. And I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm in change and transformation now for almost 25 years. Um, may it be in sports or may it be in business, changes are made by humans, with humans, for humans. And also, this is the only way that it makes sense. And yeah, so technology is just a means, but it's never the purpose. And I think, especially as leaders, you have to hold this up.
Couldn't agree more. Listen, let me switch gears here. You are an author and a speaker. Now, before we get into the books, I know you have, because we talk about it, I know you have a very different speaking style from what people would expect from somebody coming from the business world. So, would you like to share that with the audience? What do you do when you are on stage and why is it different?
Uh, well, I think we have touched it already. As your listeners can imagine, when I go up on stage and I'm asked to talk about leadership, I'm using music, I'm using dancing videos, and I actually make people dance. And it's always fascinating to see that even a tech audience uh, gets goes along with it and has really a lot of fun. And the reason why I'm doing this is actually when I wrote my book about leadership and dancing, I then got the request by an agency that they wanted me to have as a keynote speaker, and I was kind of in trouble because I thought I just wrote the book and I didn't have the keynote available. But then I said, okay, I want to be authentic because as a dance coach, the one thing that you learn quite early is you will change habits only through a new experience. So if I want you to make a step differently, you need to actually do the step differently and see how it feels. And this is the way you learn. And so I thought, okay, I want to make the audience feel something different and experience something different. And the fun thing is now, after 4 years of being on stages and having these keynotes, I always meet people again and say, I remember back then we danced and I took so much away from it. And that is the biggest compliment I think that someone can give you. So that I remember this time, and this is also one of the big sayings, the wonderful sayings that we have in dancing. Um, we have a great artist, a woman who once said, "People after a certain time, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." And I think that's what I try to give to my audience. I want to give them a feeling by spending my feelings on stage, and that's what helps them to learn.
Yes, it's also been proven in neuroscience that when there is emotion attached to new information, the brain retains that information. It learns it faster, remembers it quickly, and retains it for longer. So coupling learning with emotions is why we learn really fast about things we take care about. It's why teenagers always complain that they can't memorize 20 pages of history, but they can memorize 200 songs. It's because they care about the songs, they feel passion towards the songs. meaning the history book is probably way less interesting to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen one thing. I just to give you an anecdote. I was on stage and I was giving a present to the organizers of the show, and so I had them because it's a couple and they had their anniversary, and I said, okay, we will make you do the famous scene from Dirty Dancing, the final mambo, on stage, and this will be our present to you. So I showed them just a few steps and they did it. And then I turned to the audience and said, but in the movie, the whole room is dancing. So I need you all to stand up now. And I want you to sing along because everybody knows the song. I've had the time of my life. So I want you to sing and dance and let's recreate this movie scene. And this was the ceremony for the CIO of the Year award in Austria. So we ended up on this event. Everybody was dancing and singing along. And then I returned to this table, and there was a VP of a tech company. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, Bernd? When you were on stage and you told us that we should sing and dance, with every piece of my body, I was thinking, I don't want to sing, I don't want to dance. I'm at an awards ceremony. 10 minutes later, I find myself singing and dancing, and I enjoy it so much. How do you do that? And my answer was the thing I'm convinced the only thing that I do is I'm on stage and I'm saying, it's okay. It's okay to have fun, and it's okay to have that experience together. And he nodded at me and said, yes, that's basically the point. And that's what we need to do as leaders. Say it's okay.
I love that point. I don't know if you read this book. There is a book called The Culture Code by Dan Coyle. And he touches upon the fact that the high performing cultures are characterized mainly by safety, meaning if it's okay to make mistakes, if it's okay to walk into the CEO's office and say, hey, I have this idea for a product, and you are like 10 layers below C-suit, if you make that a reality, the company will innovate faster. The company will perform better because people will feel excited about coming to work and suggesting something new because they will feel heard. They will feel like they are, I won't say family, but they will see like they are part of a community where they can have an impact. And, impact gives people purpose. So safety, create a safe environment. We say it's okay, matters. It's another intangible that just makes a massive difference in companies.
Absolutely. And also there's a strong point in this, unspoken rules that people think do exist. So I'm there at that award ceremony in a suit, and the unspoken rule says not too much fun, not dancing, not nothing, just sitting there listening, applauding. Um, and I'm on stage and I'm giving new rules. I say it's okay to dance. It's absolutely okay. It's even wanted. I want you to stand up and dance and sing. And I think this is a good example. I was just giving new rules to the room, and because I was the one on stage, for everyone else, it was okay. And I think this is the huge power that we have as leaders, which we underestimate very often. Sometimes it just needs a sentence from us to create new rules. And this is like a hidden power that every one of us has in his or her pocket. And we should use this much more often, just by saying, okay, guys, it's okay. And let's do that. It's wanted. And I think that usually this is the biggest leverage to unleash the power of a crowd. If you are the person standing in front of the crowd, hey, it's okay if you do that. Boom. And people go.
They open up their minds. Um, Listen, your book is in German, but can you tell us more about your book? Especially, since it being in German, I think it's good. First of all, there are people from Germany who listen to this show. Second of all, it's cool if for the known German speakers, you explain what the book is about and a couple lessons from it. So please go off.
I think we've touched a lot of it. So basically, the translated title of the book is Defying Gravity. Um, it's leadership through the eyes of the dancer. And basically, I've written this book like a practice lesson, the way you would go through my dancing practice, and I'm sharing anecdotes from my life, from my career as an athlete, but also from my career as a manager and a leader working in transformation and digital. And like I said, I'm touching the things that matter to you as an athlete. So it's a lot about self-reflection on how do I learn to understand myself? How do I learn and reflect on my partner, which is obviously important in a couple. You have two very professional soloists that need to put themselves together and create something which is bigger than just the sum of two. And then also thinking about the audience, thinking about the competition. And finally, in the end, thinking about why are you doing that? There's a reason in my life why I became a dancer and not a soccer player or weightlifter. And also, talk about the things that managers are not used to talk about. I'm deeply convinced that in our life, the people we are today is the result of the ups and downs we had to go through in our life, and we are much more formed by our lows than by our highs. And if I work with athletes, I need to understand the lows of their past in order to make them better and prepare them for a competition. But in business, we are not used to talking about our lows. We are just talking about our highs and our best practices and our successes. Um, and so I'm also raising the questions to the readers. Let's be open about our lows and let's share them, because that's the way to heal and that's the way to improve. So I'm trying to take everyone through the road of an athlete and through the road of art and creating something that at the end of the day will move the audience. And I think that's what we want as leaders at the end of the day. We want to be remembered as leaders, and we want to leave a feeling. And that's what we do as dancers, as a business. And I'm just sharing a bit of that in that book.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. And you're absolutely right, especially when it comes to the fact that people in business just want to talk about their wins. And something that also makes a massive difference in leadership is sharing vulnerabilities, which is another topic Dan Coyle touches upon in the book. And something I recommend leaders all the time, especially if they have employees, is everybody's dealing with shit at any given moment, right? Like any business. However, I understand the reluctancy and the fear of sharing something you're dealing with now. But if you share very openly past challenges and how you felt through them, people get to see you for your vulnerable version, but they also get to learn something, which is what you learned from going through the challenge. So sharing past challenges tends to be a good way to bridge that gap between I don't want to share anything with my employees because they need to see me as strong, and sharing vulnerabilities without being seen as, oh my God, we are afraid now because the company is not doing well, which is a good balance also for people who are building online. Sharing past challenges tends to be a game changer because it lets you show a side of yourself without exposing too much of what maybe you're insecure about in the present moment.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I did this with my leadership team here and also in the past. I always, when it's the right moment in time, I always have a slide where I say, I want to tell you about me. What happened in my past. And I also do that on stage in my keynotes, because there have been things in my life that have made me the person I am today. Just to give an example, I lost my mother quite early. She died when I was 15. That did something to me. I had to become an adult very, very early, and I had to take over responsibility for a father who was already very ill at that time. So I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you about the road that I've taken. And I think that helps people also to understand it. My point is not everybody has to see me as strong, but my employees and the team I'm working with, they need to understand how I function. They need to understand what triggers me. They need to understand the background of why something important for me, something is not. So, for example, if I tell them, usually every day I tell people in my environment, if I work with them, is thank you so much for what you did. And I often, very often get the question of employees, so why are you thanking us so much? And I'm telling them, I've made the experience that I've lost people why I desperately wanted to say thank you, but they're gone. And I have no chance to do that anymore, uh, even though I really wanted. So I'm just taking the opportunity. I don't know if I see you again tomorrow. So I'm telling it to you today. Say thank you. It was amazing and you helped me a lot. And I think this is something where people understand, okay, and this is why he's telling us where he's coming from. They know how I function. And I think that's essential also to create a high performing team.
I agree. I do the same with clients. There are clients with whom I have chatted on WhatsApp until 3 a.m. There are clients who are giving a support to on personal things. And somebody has asked me, like, what are you doing at 2 a.m. talking about personal stuff with a client? You should keep it professional. I'm like, it's not that I'm keeping it unprofessional. It's that sometimes, often, not always, a client is a person. And if they're talking to me about somebody, about something, it's because probably they feel like there's nobody else that listens, or they feel some kind of connection that makes them feel like I can understand or I can at least listen. And I do that because there have been times in my life where I just felt extremely alone and I had nobody to listen to me or nobody I could feel safe opening up to. And that has made a massive difference in the quality of my relationship with clients who have turned into friends while keeping things perfectly professional.
Yeah, I think professional is okay. And I'm also touching that in my book. Of course, we have to define what professional means. Of course, I'm a great friend of in time, in scope, in budget, in quality. If that's what you mean with professional, being somebody who professionally delivers, absolutely. I'm totally with you. But I think also that this term of what professional means has also been, has somehow, developed itself in an unspoken space. And also, of course, has been formed by people from the generations before. I mean, if I think of my father, who was the CEO himself, he was still participating in World War II. This was a totally different generation. They have not been raised in a way that means talk about your emotions. They have been raised in a time in the world where it was all about taking responsibility and being strong. They have never learned to speak about their emotions. And I think we also have to consider this generational aspect if we talk about the evolution of leadership, that leadership has always been defined by the current generation of leaders. And I think we also have the responsibility to develop how we understand leadership in today's world and not in the world of 30 years or 50 years ago.
I love that. Listen, we're almost running out of time. So before I let you go, um, switching gears again, you are a kid from the 80s. As we talked about, I'm a big 80s fan. What is your favorite movie from the 80s?
Oh, I think watching your background right now, which the listeners can't see, but I grew up with Miami Vice. I watched that television series up and down. And when it comes to movies, it's all the Sylvester Stallone movies of the 80s that I watched up and down, and which I still enjoy to that day, and which always is a trip back down memory lane, watching Sylvester Stallone today, or seeing a Ferrari with Sonny Crockett. And yeah, I think it's like the same thing with dancing. Movies are a possibility to dream yourself in a different reality, which is good time to time, and also keeps your energy up. But let me turn back the question. What's your favorite movie of the 80s?
Uh, long list. Of course, the Rocky saga has to play a big role, right? I watched all the Rocky movies except Rocky 5. That one sucked, but was in the 90s. But the great Rocky movies, I watched them all like probably 20, 30 times. Miami Vice, I've been through the series twice, and I plan on doing that again. And I would say Scarface has to be in the list because I really love Scarface. It's a great damn story.
Absolutely. Great one. Great choice.
Thank you. Listen, Bernd, I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you so much for being on the show. Do you care to tell people where they can find you, where they can reach out to you, where they can just want to have a chat, invite you to be a speaker? How can they do that?
Oh, I look forward to meeting people from your audience, and I'm happy to have a chat. I think the best way to meet me is find me on LinkedIn, and of course, the people in Germany find my books on Amazon or the book vendor of your convenience. And also, I have it out as an audiobook narrated by myself, and you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and co. But for personal contact, best thing is LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will put the links in the description on all platforms. Bernd, it was a pleasure having you on. I really had a blast during this show. People, this was the Tech of Tomorrow podcast with Sebastian Hidalgo. I am Sebastian Hidalgo. You know what the show is about. Today was a perfect representation of it. Remember, follow, like, subscribe, comment, share, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.